What's up, everyone? Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. Today, John and I get to welcome Patrick and Trevor. Patrick, founder of Freehold, contributor to CityCoin. Trevor Owens, managing partner at the Stacks Accelerator. That'll be fun to chat about that and see what they're up to. I've seen Munib be tweeting about some of the stuff going on over there too. We'll be discussing CityCoins today, like Miami Coin, NYC Coin. Maybe a little bit of what's coming down the pike. I don't know if they're calling it ATX coin or Austin coin or what, but I'm in that Discord, and there's some people starting to chat about that too. I'll be sure we'll be talking about Stacks a lot. Looks like they've got a lot coming up. I mean, shit, John, we've been talking about Stacks and Blockstack for, I don't even know. That was the first conference, like a crypto conference I ever went to. It was like that Blockstack conference back in 2018. It was freaking awesome.
I was going to say 5 years. It was 4 years ago. Wow.
Yeah, long time ago. And I'm going to try to pull up this. We're going to give away an NFT today. Let me see. I don't want to share my whole screen right now and give away all my notes. Dun, dun, dun. Can you see that? NYC DGens number 111. So all you have to do is get into Twitter. Go on Twitter. There's a live stream that's posted there. Ask your questions. Cobby's listening over there. He'll figure it out. And whoever gets their question asked will get this NFT. I'm super stoked. It's got silver rims, only 25%, pretty low. Midnight color though, 9.09%. So we'll fire that up. It'll be super fun. Just a reminder to everyone, we do not take payment for our live streams. We bring on super fun, cool people who have dedicated their lives to crypto that are wanting to build and are building in the space, which these guys are. Make a point here, slam that subscribe button. We got a bunch of great live streams coming up. And enough for me. Let's bring these guys up here. Bam. Patrick, Trevor, what's up, you guys?
How's it going?
Hey, thanks for having us.
Great to see your smiling faces this morning. Thanks for coming on. Obviously, we've been longtime fans of what you guys have been building over at Stacks and now CityCoins, and we're really excited to hear about that. And the way we always like to start is, where are you in the world today? What's it like there? Why is Stacks the best project on the earth? No, just kidding. What's your role at Stacks or CityCoin? Maybe Patrick, we can start with you.
Yeah, sure. So I'm in the United States, and I used to be the head of growth at Stacks, spun out, started a company called Freehold, and I'm one of the core contributors to sort of community leads of CityCoins. And CityCoins are protocols that unlock a new funding mechanism for cities, and also create an open source developer ecosystem. And part of the reason we have Trevor on the call here today is that latter part, and getting the open source ecosystem for developers started on CityCoins. We can get into more CityCoin stuff, but that's kind of my brief intro.
Cool. Thank you. Trevor, who are you? What do you do?
Yeah, so I'm Trevor Owens. I'm the managing partner of Stacks Accelerator, and we are a early stage accelerator fund. We invest in companies from two developers with an idea, all the way to companies that are coming in with a $50 million valuation who are looking to integrate with Stacks. The whole gamut. We're trying to bring the best companies in the Web3 world to the Stacks ecosystem so they can build on Bitcoin. They can get access to the incredible amount of capital and users that aren't able to do anything with their Bitcoin. That's the problem, is that Bitcoin is such an important asset to the future of sovereignty and to the future of digital currency, but you can't really do much with it. And Stacks offers the best way and the most ergonomic way for developers to build great applications that can work with native Bitcoin for things like DeFi, NFTs, or completely new things that we've never even thought of or seen before, like CityCoins. And we have a dedicated CityCoins track to our next cohort. We are doubling down hard on CityCoins because we believe it's such a game changer. I see CityCoins as the app store for cities. I think that the incentive mechanism that it creates for the cities is unlike anything we've seen before. With Miami Coin, we saw legislation was passed to accept the wallet within 6 weeks of launching. I've never seen a government do anything within 6 weeks.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And so that's incredible validation as far as I'm concerned. And the idea that, there's so much innovation that needs to happen in government, and that this gives cities a financial incentive to be like an accelerator, to accept new Web 3.0 companies and to adopt their technologies into everything that they're doing. It's creating the app store for cities. And it's not just an app store for one city for these entrepreneurs, but once an entrepreneur has their app live in any of these cities, it's accessible to all of the future CityCoins that launch. So I think that's a very compelling thing for entrepreneurs. And as a VC, I think it's a compelling thing for VC. So that's why we're doubling down on it. Amazing.
And I've got a couple of questions that I want to go back to a little bit about just like you guys and, how you got involved. But I do want to, maybe we can talk just really quickly about like, what was like the Miami Coin origin story? Like, how did that kind of get started? And like, why do you think that was so successful at the beginning there?
Yeah. So Miami Coin, the idea for CityCoins kind of happened on a Twitter Spaces call. Yeah, we were talking about how Stacks uses proof of transfer as a mechanism for creating Bitcoin yield for Stacks holders and also for securing the network. And the idea was brought up. That you could have like a dev fund that gets like 30% of all the sort of pass through, all the Bitcoin that's contributed to my new Stacks that gets forwarded to Stacks holders. What if you just had 30% go to a dev fund or something? And I think maybe it was the number 30% that went off my head, and I was like, that's like a tax rate.
Yeah.
I was like, what if the dev fund was actually just like a government? And that way you can just give the government something as opposed to asking them to do something for crypto. It's like, no, just add value to crypto and have them be kind of like the have them be sort of the dev fund, and let the market grade them based on how well they deploy their capital, how well they maintain their own network. And so now we're seeing all sorts of like blog posts and newspaper and news articles about how cities are fusing with protocols now, and that started with CityCoins. And so obviously like the city to go to first was Miami. You have like probably the best mayor in the world at the moment, Mayor Suarez, who is he essentially like he recognized there's a new game happening, and he's like cleaning up and just like showing every mayor on earth how it's done. And that new game is people can work remotely now, so you as a city have to attract talent in order to compete with other cities. You can't just rely on people just living in your city forever, and your city just being good. Like that, a lot has changed. People are trying on cities like they're trying on shoes. They can try a new city if they want to 6 months from now. So you need to compete hard to get the world's innovators to live in your city and want to contribute to your city.
Yeah, and I've been thinking about this a lot lately of like where like it's going to be 2023 next year, right? It's crazy. It's like when 2022 is like sounds like the future, like 2023 is like suddenly like it's 2030, right? And it's like I feel like technology has been like locked in this like mobile phone in this like space, and it's like I just don't necessarily know if like we're going to be living in a much more advanced VR world, metaverse, whatever, in 7 years. But I feel like the innovation of technology is like what you're saying of like people living wherever they want, like this live workspace is going to change. It's like if you're a believer that like all ideas are imminent, like why is CityCoins like working right now? Like it's clearly gaining some steam. Like people like this. Like why is this working at this juncture in time?
Yeah, I think you guys. I think well. The first thing I'd say is I think people understand cities. Like you may not understand like a DAO that provisions liquidity and does XYZ. It's like whoa. Like most people aren't even into finance at that level. It's great that crypto is bringing people into finance and understanding these kind of concepts. But everyone knows what a city is. I think that's like a good first sort of start. Like the meme is very strong. Just like you have like the LA Lakers or the Miami Heat. people have affinities for their hometown, and our community is a civic-minded community, and we believe that you should be able to permissionlessly innovate and add value to a city if you want to, and not just be living in a city and that's your only relationship to it. It's like you should be able to build for a city, or have like an interest in seeing the city succeed. So if you have a stake in the city's success, I think that adds a whole new dimension.
Yeah. And then go ahead, Trevor. Yeah.
I'll add to that. I mean, I think when we go back to like the mobile era of how much having a smartphone or iPhone introduced new use cases, like Uber wouldn't have been possible without the smartphone, and so many of these incredible new companies. It's all about changing behavior, right? And so having like a GPS with you all the time, having access to your computer all the time, has shown us new ways that that changes people's behavior, right? And with crypto, we're seeing how incentives, specifically monetary incentives, can dramatically change people's behavior. And that's something that we haven't really seen in the internet era for entrepreneurs who are building products, to think about the financial and monetary incentive to actually change people's behavior. And traditionally, there's been very little innovation when it comes to, in government. It moves very slowly. It's usually, the consumer industry that moves the fastest, and then the enterprise, and then the government is the last to adopt new innovations. But the thing that we've seen with CityCoins, the incentive that we've seen specifically with Miami, where I believe it was, if annualized at the current rate with Miami Coin, it would be 1/5 of the city's entire tax base. Okay. And that's like before we've developed apps on it. That's before this accelerator is kicked off and shown what's possible to actually build on this platform. That's already what it's doing. And so if you're the mayor of one of these cities and you're thinking, oh my gosh, I could completely replace my tax base by turning our organizations in my administration into an accelerator by welcoming this new technology, it's really interesting to see that the fundamental job of the government could change through this new mechanism. And so, in the previous era before crypto, this would never been possible, because we haven't been able to see how to change people's behavior through innovative financial incentives like this. And it's just wild to see what's possible.
Yeah, in the previous era, governments would have a .gov URL. In the Web3 era, governments have CityCoins.
I think it's interesting hearing Trevor talk about changing behavior. And we've been to Miami multiple times in the last year. I can't believe the energy there. It's like unparalleled. I haven't seen anything like it, especially in the United States. And it's interesting to see that translate out of like an hour ago, you guys on your main account tweeted that, Bitcoin's going to be distributed to the residents. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you tell a crypto entrepreneur that the residents of Miami are getting Bitcoin, where's that crypto entrepreneur gonna park themselves? They're going to go to Miami. Totally. And so I'm curious, how does that work? How are the residents of Miami going to be distributed Bitcoin?
Yeah, sure. So the process of mining Miami coin or any city coin is that instead of spending electricity, you spend cryptocurrency. And the cryptocurrency you spend to compete to win new city coins, 30% of it goes directly to a reserved wallet for the city. So you consider it like an opt-in tax for using the network. And so those stacks have just like built up in that wallet. And the city of Miami has like tens of millions of dollars worth of stacks, and those stacks happen to yield about 8 to 10% APY in Bitcoin. And so as that wallet gets bigger and bigger, their Bitcoin yield will get bigger and bigger. So we're just like a few months in, and already Miami has like the seeds of becoming kind of like an oil-rich country that can pay its citizens.
Fascinating way to look at it. Wow.
Imagine like
UBI, universal basic income.
That's sustainable.
There's exactly. The dividend.
I like that.
Yeah.
But the thing is, the more Miami coin gets used, the higher the dividend for its residents. So every resident is essentially like, okay, I need to get behind this, so I get my dividend up.
So logistically, how does that work though? So the city's got that. Do all the residents download a specific wallet? Are they whitelisted?
So the city's doing this independently. I don't know exactly how they're doing it. I'm sure they're going to have some wallet where. Well, what I know is that they're looking at doing it for just voting citizens.
Yeah,
because it's really hard for them to know who is an actual citizen. It's like that's a real problem for a lot of cities, and so they can get voting citizens and compare it to sort of who they'll give them a wallet and then they'll start just earning Bitcoin, and that Bitcoin is just going to be a drip. That is a constant reminder that your government loves you and wants you to be healthier, wealthier, and happier, and that's just one dimension.
It just blows my mind, honestly. I mean, like we're in California, right? And it seems like every conversation is about taxing you more, not let alone paying you. I mean, that's just it's not in the conversation at all.
Yeah, or at least like they'll pay, it's paying you, but in a non-sustainable model that's creating inflation across like a bunch of different sectors.
Have you guys heard of this this term called state capacity?
Nope.
So state capacity is essentially it's almost like strength for a government. It's like how good of a job can the government do, and state capacity is measured like on a few different dimensions. One is actually ability to tax residents. It's like, are you do you have enough authority to tax your own citizens? Do you wield a monopoly on violence in order to do so? Another is, do you protect them from danger? That's another measure of state capacity. Another is, can you enforce property rights? Another is, are you able to reduce the level of chronic homelessness? Things like that. And I think there are new dimensions that can be measured that currently aren't, that CityCoins can either gamify or help unlock or help track. And so one of those already with the dividend is literally just measuring the wealth of your citizens. Like, shouldn't your citizens all become wealthier? Like, poverty is not a virtue. It's not good if your citizens become poorer. So why don't we measure wealth and try to get that number up? Same thing for health and happiness. So like with health, you should have like a anonymized health tracker app that citizens will like. They're like, yeah, I give this to them because I get in return. Like I want the government, I want the city to know if I'm not sleeping, if someone in their city is not sleeping well, they don't have to know it's me. You can actually do like a zero knowledge sort of proof of that. It's like essentially proof of health of your city is interesting, and then proof of happiness. So like, imagine if you had like a net promoter score. Like, would you recommend the city to other people? Like 1 out of 10. What are you voting on? I just think there's all sorts of ways for cities to level up and almost measure themselves the same way like a startup would measure itself.
Yeah, it's really interesting to think about that, because it's like, hey, I'm going to move to Miami, and you ask like 6 people, like, or you're like, hey, when's the last time you went there? Like, there's not like knowledge at scale of like the quality of life, like in like by neighborhood as well. Like you just don't know, like, and no one wants to give that type of information if someone knows who you are that's giving it. But when you're trustless, you can. Right. And you can actually give this information and feel comfortable that you can remove it at any time, and that it's yours, which is really interesting. So Trevor, I did want to talk about the accelerator and like how the accelerator is thinking about this. I mean, you mentioned smaller startups to larger startups. It's like, I get these like intros all the time, and someone's like, oh yeah, we're investing in like series, like pre-seed up to like this, series D and whatnot. And it's like, well, shit, how do you focus on
that's what VCs say, because they don't have a thesis, so they just tell you
exactly
we invest in anything, which is actually kind of true, because as a VC you have to, if you see a good deal and it doesn't fit your thesis but it's the best deal, then you should invest. I mean, you have to act rationally. So but our thesis for Accelerator is completely around the team and the individuals. we of course we invest in Web3, DeFi NFTs. We're investing in CityCoins, so those are sort of the parameters around it. But we don't really. I mean, actually, we do have a hit list for some ideas, but we just try to focus on the team and not the idea, because ideas change, and the idea is more like an IQ test. It's like, tell me how you think about the idea, and how did you come up with the idea, and how are you going to execute the idea? And we look for that thought process. And specifically, our fund, we have an emphasis on, we want to look for practical people. We want to look for people who have a step-by-step approach to going to market. They have a key insight about the market, and they are flexible to change their idea if new information comes along or a better way to do it comes along. In my experience, I have a background in training entrepreneurs specifically around the lean startup method. I worked with Eric Ries, the author of Lean Startup, like when the book first came out. I've been training entrepreneurs around the world, and I found that some people get lucky, they hit a home run when the first swing at the ball, but most people they go through many iterations, and they have to change, they have to pivot. And that's sort of the systematic way that most entrepreneurs become successful. And so when we're looking at CityCoins, this is such a new and innovative protocol and platform that most of the things, like, we're at the tip of the iceberg. We don't know what's possible yet. But I generally kind of think of it like the App Store for cities. So I think about, where can that partnership be between resources that the city has, that the city can see this as a revenue stream, as a new monetization model, as Patrick said, for their institutions. And so the city is incented to give access to companies that can leverage CityCoins. So if I'm going to build, for example, I'm giving us a very simple example just for this, but doesn't mean it's a good idea or not, but a parking application, okay? The city controls all the parking, they give the parking tickets, and they regulate how that's monetized. Now, if they could make a higher level of revenue by incorporating CityCoins, if an entrepreneur came along and said, hey, I have the best parking app where, you can use this mobile app, you can find parking spots, and you can, reserve them with CityCoins. And there was an opportunity to turn a resource that maybe is under monetized or underutilized by the city or needs innovation in terms of technology. That's a financial incentive for the city to move quickly and to incorporate that. And so that's the power of CityCoins, is that it opens a monetization model for the cities to where new technology is not necessarily a cost center like technology normally is, or technology is not, needing to go through all these bureaucratic processes, but the sort of normal RFP process that a government would go through to adopt new technology now becomes an accelerator process where they're actually incubating those startups because they have the financial incentive to do so. So we have a lot of companies that are applying for the program right now, and a lot of the incentive is that they want to work with the city, or they view their company as as being very civic minded and being focused on industries that are relevant to the public interest.
So a question on that of like, I get like, hey, like we're going to go fund like a DeFi tool or an NFT platform or something kind of like net new built on top of Stacks, like something else, right? I get that. But it's like, when you're talking like specifically about like a city, so someone's like, hey, I'm a coffee shop in San Diego, and like, I'm thinking about this to use the CityCoin. The CityCoin doesn't exist yet, maybe, right? It's like, can they, like what level of like integration with like the government there does someone need to like begin it, knowing that it's like open source and like technically anyone could probably go start something, right? It's like does it just take a couple small teams, a couple small businesses, like how does that happen? And then and also, how do you think about that from like a funding perspective of like, hey, like we're going to go help you start like San Diego coin, and then you're going to be this like side business. Like there's just, I don't know, I guess a couple questions there.
So is the question like how new CityCoins get activated, or is it more
I think a little bit of both? Like,
okay.
and but
like
how
go
to
market for the founders?
Yeah, like as I'm a founder and I'm in San Diego, and like I definitely know I would love to use this, but there's no coin there yet. Do I have to help get this thing like off the ground in San Diego first, or can I like start building something kind of on the side? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, and in just a couple of months, there's going to be kind of like a one-click button that city governments can push, and when they push that button, their CityCoin gets activated.
Nice.
Wow.
Yeah, and they're gonna have a whole like city developer kit that goes with it by the end of March, and it's gonna be like super buttoned up and ready to go. In terms of like yeah, if you like live in San Diego and you want a CityCoin, yeah, ideally you have the city government bought in. Like with Miami, it was activated before the government bought in, but you don't want to do that as like a go-to method, just because cities generally do want to claim their protocol rewards that are earned, that are reserved for them.
Sure.
Doesn't mean that's how you should do it every time, I think. But I think there's kind of like there's like a few different categories of like government involvement or not involvement. So like one is like, yeah, you can convince the government to do some integration with parking meters or with like fixing potholes or things like that, or sponsoring parks, for example, through like NFT sales or something like that. Yes, you can do all that stuff. But I think the broad, like the mass sort of innovation that will happen will be permissionless. So it'll be people organizing around the coin, not asking the government for permission, but just adding sort of like layers of new applications and new protocols and new projects onto the actual coin itself. So I can give you like a few examples of the sort of permissionless category. So I'll start with like whimsical and move to like more practical. So like a whimsical idea is like, can we increase the square footage of a city? Okay, so how would you do that? What you might do is you might have like a hardware actuator that opens up a door if you provably hold some New York City coin or Miami coin or what have you. And behind that door is beyond that door is like a space where people who hold the coin, can be. So almost by definition, in a weird way, you've expanded the footprint of that city. That I think is like fascinating from like a territory expanding standpoint and like kind of like outsourcing a culture standpoint. You could have like Miami embassies all over the world, for example, and Miami can act more like a city state than a city.
Yeah, because you might say like almost saying like, what if Fort Lauderdale is like, we're just gonna use Miami coin.
Yeah, could do. It's like, Mark Andreessen has that phrase, software is eating the world. It could be like Miami is eating the world, like that, that's possible.
Yeah.
There's other, you could create services that fund, paving the roads or beautifying parks and things like that. One idea I was talking to Jack Butcher about, who's like a visual artist, is this idea of having like an auction every single day for like a piece of, I say Miami, you could do this with any city, for like a piece of Miami in the metaverse, or maybe just an NFT representation of like a city block. And when you buy an NFT, you can trade it, after the fact, but maybe 80% of the funds go toward Parks and Rec, specifically to make sure that area is like kept clean, or like tulips are planted, or maybe a sign goes up saying you sponsored it. So I think that's kind of an interesting way to permissionlessly, sponsor spaces without having a specific partnership. You can just say, we're going to donate these funds to like Parks and Rec or whatever. And there's examples like you can have investigative journalism. You can create like a DAO for like journalism on like crime or homelessness or whatever your topic du jour. And there's millions of other ideas. I'm kind of giving some like basic ones that I think a lot of people will understand.
Yeah, I mean, to add to that, there's also like just simply infrastructure investment ideas. So, we have mining pools in the Stacks community, and there's a pool for Miami, there's a pool for New York, where people pool their funds together in order to mine the city's coin. And doing a simple protocol or infrastructure tool like that, you can take a transaction fee or cut of some of the mining that you're doing for providing that service. And I think another way to think about CityCoins is kind of like the holders of the coin are in a way stakeholders of the revenue stream. And so if the city is seeing like Miami, hey, this is in the earliest stage of this is already a fifth of our revenue, of our tax-based revenue. And if we could grow this 10x, hey, we're doing double what we've ever done, and we don't have to tax anybody anymore. We can actually give dividends, as Patrick said, to our residents.
Yeah.
The people who are mining and who are spending stacks to acquire the coin, or people who are buying the coin on secondary, are like a kind of stakeholder, or I don't know what the right word is, but kind of stakeholder for the revenue stream that the city cares so much about. And so, as Patrick was mentioning, just organization or different ways to organize around those stakeholders to give feedback to the city or to drive initiatives within the city is a compelling idea. Ways to use this protocol in a different way, either for DeFi or for organization.
Yeah, I joined one of the New York City pools just the other day just to try and kind of check it out, like pool number 5. And it was interesting because I was like, well, I'm a tourist of New York. I love New York. So I kind of thought of like a dividend. I don't know what you want to say, but it was like, I'm like a tourist. And I was like, hey, but I'd like to go there and I want to participate in that and be a part of that in a way, because I spend some time there. And I think about Miami kind of the same way of like, hey, the cities that I like to visit and like to be a part of, even though I might not be living there at that point in time, I want to participate in, because I want to see those cities grow and I like to be a part of that. I thought that was an interesting thing of like thinking about it almost like tourism, where it's like, hey, you might not live in this certain city, but certain cities are completely dependent on tourism. So it doesn't necessarily matter if you're living there or not. It's like, hey, you go spend like a lot of your capital there.
You're not a real citizen, but you're a crypto citizen.
Right.
Like, you're a citizen of that city's protocol. You're not a citizen. You're not an official citizen. You're a tourist of that city. And I think people all over the world have affinities towards certain cities that sometimes people haven't even visited. There's actually I think there's this syndrome that I think it's called Japan syndrome. When Japanese people visit Paris, some of them become so overwhelmed at what they thought Paris was that you can look this up on Google. It's like a real thing that they're so underwhelmed by what it is versus what they think it's going to be. It's like, wow. Those people might have been Paris coin holders before visiting Paris. Paris is a great city, obviously, but
right.
Like just a fun sort of like actual real life thing that apparently exists. So like people all over the world have affinities towards cities, or romanticize cities, or like the ethos of a city. Like some people love the idea of Tel Aviv, but have never been there and would love to hold Tel Aviv coin. And some people would want to hold, city coins for places in the world where they might move to next. So they might say, well, if things don't go so well in my country, maybe I want to be a big holder of Lisbon coin because I love Lisbon. It's a beautiful city. It's very welcoming to the crypto crowd. And maybe 5 years from now, the city of Lisbon looks very favorably upon people that hold Lisbon coin because they've essentially, held a portion of the market up that has been feeding them, non-tax revenue. So it's like, it's not a crazy thing to suggest that people should even have their taxes reduced for holding city coins, for example. If you're mathematically offsetting your taxes with the sort of earnings that the city is getting, you should be accounted for. I feel like.
Yeah. That feels like an amazing like plugin, right? Like kind of you're thinking about like Shopify, like, hey, I've just built this kind of middleware that like is the calculator that offsets based on how much tax I pay and how much I need to hold in order to offset that, and here's how I earn towards to get that. Like sounds super simple.
It is super. That's actually a great idea. Maybe Francis Suarez should motion for that.
Yeah,
that's a very simple equation too.
Yeah, like totally. It's kind of the same idea as like what you always talk about, and like Stacks is a good example of this. Of like, hey, how much tax do I need to hold to be like net zero on like my mortgage, my cell phone payments, my car payments, my insurance? Like, what is your monthly amount. Here's how much I have to earn to get to that. Like, it's just a very simple amount of like, getting off of, and getting onto like, the industry that we all love. I mean, it's just a very simple way to think about it. I do want to ask you guys, since we're talking about like city, all the cities that you guys love, like here's my fun question. If you can snap your fingers and this city has a city coin tomorrow, like what's your dream city coin right now?
Well, I think it looks like Austin might be next. Just their mayor has been showing interest, and there's also like a council member or two that seem to want to bring this up for a council vote in February. So I'm kind of like, me personally, I'm kind of just like, Austin's got a good brand. They have a lot of really good hackers there that will build on this in the CityCoins ecosystem. So that would be a good win. Internationally, I think Seoul and Singapore are big ones.
Seoul.
Yeah. Trevor's from Seoul.
I live in Seoul. I'm in Boston now, but I live in Seoul. So I'd love to see Seoul coin. And the Korean crypto community is huge. It's pound for pound, one of the biggest. Like, they're crazy about crypto there, and the government is very heavy into leading innovation there. So I think it's a very great target, and it would be a good gateway into Asia.
Our sort of like strategy as a community thus far has been light up the US and like win in the US, then win elsewhere. Mm-hmm. But Seoul will be amazing. Singapore is like a twofer. You get a country and a city. So that's actually a good one.
Do you guys know one of the candidates for president in Korea just did an NFT raise for his campaign?
Oh, no way.
Well, yeah. That's great.
They're definitely like fashion forward when it comes to like all of that, I would say. John and I spent a little time there too. And I mean, ultra fast internet too.
Really? Oh, yeah. How much faster than what you're getting?
Everything on par seems to be much faster there.
I know it's like 99% penetration, or like the highest penetration of internet in any country.
Yeah.
You think like just having an internet connection is just top of funnel for crypto. Like if you have an Ethernet cord, mm-hmm. there's going to be some coins going through that Ethernet cord, at some point in this decade.
Yeah.
So I have a question around, like, I guess it's more like minimum specs and maximum specs. It's like, a coin makes sense for cities we love, but does it make sense for cities maybe we don't love so much, small towns, or perhaps areas like we're in Orange County, where it'd be tough to do a specific city coin in Orange County, but you might do like a county coin, or have you thought about a state coin even?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we've been reached out to by countries. Wow. Like decent sized countries are like, we would like to do this. And, I think our community is really focused on cities. We think like the bottoms up approach is the way to do it. But it also might be a mistake to go too bottoms up, where you're like, you start with a little cul-de-sac, because a cul-de-sac really can't get a meaningful market cap up where that coin becomes sustainable or really like, used, unless it's like to open up a gate or something. But then do you need the market? It's kind of one of those things. It's almost like, state coins, I think actually is a great idea, but I think state coins and like region coins come after city coins have like a lot of penetration throughout like the whole earth essentially.
There's a brand there too, right? Like it's kind of like when you think about city. Like when you're hearing you kind of talk about cities, I kind of felt like also people like the affinity for like cars, right? Like people like, I've always wanted to own like a
1977 Porsche.
Yeah, or a Chevelle or something. Yeah. It's kind of like, I've always wanted to live in London. I've always wanted to live in like Rio. And like, it's kind of that brand of like, people are envisioning themselves living somewhere, just like they're envisioning driving in that car. And it's just like the longevity of that. They've been around so long. It's like, that's where I see maybe like, hey, maybe small neighboring towns are just like, hey, we're going to use that coin. And then like, maybe if you're on the cusp of, Austin and Dallas, like what coin does Waco use? Does Waco have their own coin? Exactly. Or is Waco using the Dallas token, or is Waco using the the Austin one, and it's kind of like, I don't know, maybe there's a vote, maybe there's a DAO, maybe there's a, you know, and so it's like, that's an interesting thing too. Or maybe that mayor in Waco's like, screw you guys, I'm doing my own coin, you know,
Totally. And there are like small mayors like all over the United States that are like, give me my city coin. I'm like, I don't control it. Like literally you can do it if you want to.
Yeah.
But the community also really, it's good for the community, like the large city coin community, to be bought in at this stage, just like moving as one from one city to next. Eventually it's going to be like the city does their own thing. They have their own community. Their community, you know, has some overlap with the CityCoins community. Right now, the CityCoins community is like, you know, it's like a juggernaut going from city to city, like determining what their next prey is going to be.
Yeah.
I think it'll be like more, you know, one click push in the future. One idea I keep having, and it's such a distracting idea. I'm like, I can't think about this, even though it'd be cool, is like, get like the CEO of Cover, you know, those like modular houses that are like, they're pretty sexy houses, and just start a town in like Wyoming with Kanye and just be like, this is Kanye town. And, you know, and the whole thing, maybe it's not even the CEO of Cover who creates the houses. Maybe Kanye is like the chief architect. He gets to like design, you know, all the houses and all that. And so you get everyone who's just obsessed with celebrity. They're obsessed with like him and what he wants to build. And they buy in the coin, they buy into like the governance that goes along with that coin. And they buy like, you know, they get like a lot in Wyoming or something when they get to like be around him or whatever.
What do you think, Trevor? Are you funding that?
Depends on the celebrity. I don't know about Kanye, but maybe if we get somebody else in there, I think it'd be more, you know.
Well, if he's just already building houses and like talks about this
Yeah.
stuff. So it's like, and he has a cult like following. I think that's like important. And he's in Wyoming, which is like, you know, they have like DAO laws, which may or may not be useful.
That's true. I would say maybe if it was like Jay-Z, I'd be like, let's do it. But,
yeah. True.
Yeah. No, I like that. And I feel like with
or Starbase Texas, or like Elon.
Yes.
Sorry, that's one other.
Yeah, absolutely.
I like it. John, you got one?
I got a bunch more questions. I think
I know. I have so many at the top here. I just want to be silent and let you like fire a couple off.
Well, so a few things. I mean, one, maybe just you know, an understanding of how you see the demand side of this building. So like, you know, there's a city coin for Miami, and then there's an accelerator program that's going to get startups that build that kind of application layer over it. And then there's the average residents that maybe don't have any Miami coin to use those applications. How do you see that? It's like a chicken and the egg kind of a problem. How do you see that evolving?
Yeah, I mean, Trevor, there's always a chicken egg problem, I think. And the solution for CityCoins is an innovative way to solve it. I mean, I think, as Patrick alluded to, like the fact that it's starting with cities, the meme value of that is a huge advantage to starting with cities. You know, but the meme value, while it works for it, it's a benefit to it. It's not the end all be all. There's like a incredible, you know, fertile ground for building applications that tie into city services. And so, as we talked about a little bit earlier, it's like, hey, well, do you need the city's approval to do this, or you know, do you need to like speak to them as an entrepreneur? I think that the right approach is not to. I think the right approach is to try to get off the ground organically through the city coin holders, through the residents of a city, and then you know, you need to find sort of like a single player mode. Like a lot of social networks, you know, you have a single player mode where if I go on Twitter and there's no one else on Twitter, I mean, it's kind of boring. But the way they did it is that they launched Twitter at South by Southwest, where they had a small network effect. That's not really an example of a single player mode, but there's ways you can bootstrap these networks and ways you can grow these networks to go from A to B. So you need to have sort of like different phases of how you get this off the ground. Just like a video game, if you play Call of Duty or something like that, you have the campaign mode. That's a single player mode. Products have the same things. And so thinking of what that the early phase to get off the ground is, and then having the next phase being where the city sort of buys into it is going to be the most effective way to do it. And it was actually pretty brilliant how CityCoins literally did this for themselves, where Miami Coin launched and it wasn't officially supported by the city, but because of the excitement around it, and because the vesting schedule or mining schedule for how it issues the tokens, there's a huge advantage to being in that early phase, to where you're saying, hey, well, this is promising, there's potential here. Why not just give it a shot, see if the city is going to support this? They hadn't supported it yet, but because of the economic model, there's an incentive to go in early. And then that getting people in early, the funds that were raised, the city goes, oh, I can't turn away from this. We have to do this. And then in 6 weeks, it gets written in for the city to accept the wallet. So thinking about how you can kind of like, if you start a bar, right? Like you want to get all of your friends there, or you want to get everybody of one gender there to attract the other gender to come there, right? So it's like, actually, I think the way we call it is like lions and deers. If you have a two-sided market, so it's like the deer. Once you get the deer to come to the market, the lions come hunting.
Okay.
John's choking on his water.
Yeah, of course I take a sip at that exact same time.
Yeah.
So it's interesting because it sounds like not only do these initial applications that are built for these cities need to be great ideas, they need to also understand like their early stage viral mechanics, incentivization models to kind of grow that ecosystem on the kind of consumer or resident side of the cities.
Yeah,
it's interesting.
I think a lot of builders will live in these cities. A lot of builders don't live in these cities, but I think a lot of them will. And I could see them going door to door, like activating their marketplace, like owning that relationship. Like if you think about it, the biggest marketplace in the world is citizens and their governments. It's like that two-sided marketplace. And what CityCoins does is it expands the aperture of what that relationship can look like. And so, if you're a developer, you see that big of a marketplace, be good to be a first mover advantage on something that's really useful within that marketplace.
So how do you see this is a loaded question here, the most important application of all that could get built for government, and that is governance, and that is voting. And this is something, man, I mean, the last election, how many, whether it was on social or personal conversations, how many times did you hear that we should have a blockchain voting system? And how does this play into that, you think?
Yeah. So first of all, voting systems are really, really hard. Like, I think when someone's like, oh, we'll just, the U.S. government should just have all votes be on chain. There are still very nuanced problems that come along with that. Taking a step back though, just looking at currently how voting works. There's really only two ways to vote. Technically, there's three ways to vote, but really, there's only two ways to vote. Like one is voting with your ballot, and so like half the time, the candidate you want to win doesn't win, and when they do, sometimes they don't fully do a good job, unless they're like Francis Suarez or like Eric Adams or something. It's like most people are generally unhappy when it comes to the election process, so like your control over whether some policy decision gets put forward is very minimal. Like your one vote out of many votes is very, very minimal. The other way to vote is to vote with your feet. And so essentially you can say, okay, well, I live in San Francisco right now and I want to move to Miami. Just hypothetically, I want to move to Miami because they have a plan for eradicating chronic homelessness. And the way for me to make sure that the policy decision I want to have happen, such as like reducing chronic homelessness to zero, gets implemented, is if I move to the place where it's happening. So you have like 100% control over that policy decision. And the third way of voting that I think CityCoin further unlocks, is voting with your wallet. So voting with your coins. So like a market can indicate whether they kind of agree with what a leader or a mayor is doing in a specific city, and doing with the protocol that they're based on, for example. So you have capital flight at the speed of light. You can vote literally from your phone by moving assets in and out of different city coins. You can imagine like swapping between NYC, SF, Austin, Miami, based on how the political landscape is looking. And the reason that that's important, not just for rich people, but even like your everyday stakeholder, is because you see things like GameStop and AMC happening, right? Like those are examples of when the little guy, the school of fish, is able to rise up and compete against the big whale. And this concept has a name for it, and it's like the photographic negative of insider trading. It's called outsider trading, and it's when a group of people believe in the spirit of a thing and they want it to do well, and they make a move based on that sort of belief system. So imagine if SF coin was on the market right now. I wonder how that would be trading versus Miami coin, for example. Would people be betting on the turnaround of SF, or like how much do people value SF? Like how much would people value Signal rather than virtue Signal? Yeah. You'd be able to quantify that in the markets. So
I like your point. I like your point as well about voting with your feet. Such a critical, huge point right now, because it's not only about how much money you have. It's not about, that's an equal already. It's also like you brought up like Wall Street Bets as an example. Yeah. Man, like before anyone bought anything, they were voting with their feet. If you think about it, right? They were posting all day. They were participating. They were evangelizing. They were believing in that movement, like you just said. So it's an interesting point to value that.
Without community, there's no crypto, John. I wonder who said that first. So question though about the citizens versus maybe the companies, right? So like in Miami, they're saying like, hey, like the people that get these dividends are the people that voted. As a company can't vote, but potentially like, hey, like I know like blockchain.com moved 400 people to Miami, like OKCoin moved a bunch of people there. It's like, how do you guys get those people involved? And like maybe they have like some remote people, or they living in the city. What if I live just outside the city a little bit? Like I can't vote there. Do you have any idea how they're trying to think about first, like kind of the company side of that? Because also there's probably more capital there as well, maybe a little bit less decentralized, but then also
I think the smartest cities are going to try to recruit as many founders as they possibly can to within their city confines, first and foremost, and then also to build on their protocol. So cities that pay attention to their protocol and do like hackathons and like kind of give it the attention it deserves, their city coin, I think are going to do really, really well, because not only are they able to get people to move to their city, but they're also able to get people to build for their city. And companies like OKCoin already list Miami coin, and that's kind of like how they're serving Miami citizens. Like the value of a coin is in its use, whether it's being traded, built on, held because you're bullish on city leadership, etc. OKCoin is doing their part. And yeah, I guess like the question for these various cities is like, how can you get the companies that work within your city to build on city coins, to accept city coins as like payment, for a variety of different things. So
right,
it's like you're helping your own protocol. Like
or it becomes maybe some sort of prerequisite a little bit. It's like, hey, I'm FTX Stadium. It's like, hey, why don't you guys hold some Miami coin, and then people can like pay at a discount, like at the SoFi Stadium with their debit card. You get like 25% back on purchases like at the stadium with like that card. It's like that's actually pretty solid. It's like you could probably do better than that with the token.
Totally. Yeah, you can.
But question about. No, go ahead. I was
gonna say, I think also for administration wise for cities, like as we view like the blockchain as a immutable ledger for keeping records, that could be the title to your house, or the your driver's license or any other kind of documents that these cities want to keep that are probably going to become digitized into things like NFTs. The city's going to say, hey, do we want to keep the NFTs that we're keeping in our record keeping? Do we want to have these be on Ethereum, where we don't have any stake in it, we don't make any, we don't get anything back from it, or we want to put it on our own city coin? I think that also applies
the gas fees.
Yeah, the gas fees are crazy. And also like, if you are a company that works, a vendor of the city or a vendor of the government, and like a simple thing to do if I was a startup wanting to build something is not only would I look at the resources that the cities control, like let's say parking or other documents and registrations, but I would also look at who are the vendors of the city, right? And I would say, hey, which of these tech vendors, if I'm going to go head to head with one of these vendors, who's the city going to pick between? Are the city going to want to work with a vendor who actually uses the city coin? Right. Or is the city going to be more likely to use a vendor who doesn't use a city coin? It's going to be a no-brainer that for startups to do that math and to get in there.
I just going back to that one idea. Yeah. I love that idea of like property owners getting their taxes. I'm just thinking through this a little more, like property owners getting their taxes reduced by the amount that they essentially hold within the market. That contributes to, they could offset their taxes. I think that's amazing. But there's one more idea actually that's potentially interesting. If the city was like, we're also going to buy a bunch of city coins with the money we've earned, and we're going to give it to our residents, and maybe somehow integrate that into like purchasing new real estate, or getting like getting what do you call it, like a permit for a building, so that like people who live in the city who can't afford to like buy a home at least see, maybe the value of their coins go up as a function of more people moving into the city. So it's not like displacing people. People moving into a city that doesn't have as much of a displacement effect as it normally would, for example. So that's just like another idea.
And how do they look at exchanges? I mean, I never thought I would dream of the day that my city would be tradable on a crypto exchange. Like, how do they view that? Are they asking, like, do their lawyers start going crazy and say, no way, we're not going to be on an exchange? Or is it just like super open?
This is all additional, like, there's no, like, nothing is being taken away from any citizen or government. So it's all just extra government funding and revenue. And so they should want their city coin to be listed on as many exchanges as possible.
Right.
Because it opens up the number of crypto citizens, like crypto stakeholders, that they can have. So this is all just in addition to tax revenue, which it's like icing on the cake. Cities will always have a monopoly on violence, right? Like they're never gonna be like, okay, we're gonna stop taxing people. They're like, the fact that they can tax people is, imagine if you could just tax anyone you wanted, like you would do that, like that's like, I mean, it'd be hard to resist the urge if it was like societally accepted. So cities have that societal acceptance, and they're going to continue taxing, and they're going to continue city coining.
Yeah,
but the lawyers from these cities have done very very deep diligence, and they've gotten comfortable with it, and they remark at how elegantly it was put up, it was designed.
And are they dealing with like additional exchanges and doing that whole listing processes themselves, their legal team? And
no, so I mean, invariably, do exchanges come into contact with mayors?
Right.
They have to, like, I just because these mayors are trying to recruit these exchanges to like operate in their cities. If they're like a 21st century mayor, if they're like a 20th century mayor, then they're probably playing some other game that involves status as opposed to improving the wealth of your city. So yeah, I'm sure they're coming into contact, but CityCoins is an open source project, so any exchange can list CityCoins at any time. And I mean, I'm definitely hearing rumblings. Like I believe there's demand for CityCoins from various exchanges all over the world. So
And there's no pre-mine either, so it was all a fair launch mine, which helps with the decentralization argument.
Right.
Yeah.
One kind of
no primary issuer here.
Yeah. Like kind of tactical thing. It's like so you said with Miami, it was, they didn't like force their hand, but they were like, hey, we want to do this. And then like the government kind of comes and claims it later. Like how do they actually like claim it? Like, how do you like, it's like they reach out or like how do they get access and like prove that they are the person that is, the responsible person in that local government to like have access to that wallet?
Yeah. So the process might change in the future. Like that one-click deployment process might be like they have a custody wallet set up from like a very safe custody provider,
right? And
the protocol is activated, and then they don't have to go to anyone. Right now, there is like a non-stock nonprofit foundation that essentially helps them essentially onboard. And what that looks like is a city can either have their crypto custody on their behalf and draw down on it anytime they want, and they have like a gift agreement with that foundation nonprofit, or they can just custody some of the keys or use a custody provider. So that's how it works.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's just interesting to think it's like, hey, like, I'm a group of citizens in Seoul and I'm going to try and kind of create this. And then at what point and who is that person that eventually like says, hey, like I have at some point someone has to prove something, right, of who they are and how they're kind of like a part of it. But then once that happens and it's in place, then it just kind of gets handed down over time.
Yeah. Well, if you're on a Zoom call with like the whole city staff, there's like 30 people on the call. Everyone's background is like Miami, like really like actually looking out onto the city.
Yeah, some dots to happen.
They're public figures. Plus, they use like their Twitter. Like once,
that isn't what you're about to say there though is interesting because it's something that we use, right? Like it's like there's like Twitter verified, so it's like how do we authenticate like whether or not someone is part of that? You're putting the trust sometimes in other parties, but it's like, hey, if you can spread that trust out, across a couple of those parties, it's like, hey, if you control the Miami Twitter account and like, you're like on the bank of whatever for this thing, it's like, hey, when there's a couple of those things, that's like enough trust, that trust happens and then boom, you move. But it's just interesting to kind of create those points because they're all different points of failure.
Totally. That would be a point of failure if you were trying to activate 1 million cities at once. If you're going city by city, super hard for that to happen. Like
totally.
Like it's like slow, drawn out process with like.
Well, it's interesting. Like I kind of feel like there's like an assimilation to like Uber in a way with this a little bit, where it's like this two-sided market, like we're saying, of drivers and consumers, and it's going city by city. There's a lot of like legal things that are going on because there's like this kind of like historic like way of like medallions and everything else in these cities, and it's just like I don't know. It's a very similar model. I feel like if you work for Uber right now and you want to get into Web3, like here's your play. Like
we need Web3 Uber on CityCoins. That's what we need.
Please,
because
please.
I mean, Uber had to fight the cities, right?
Right.
But if it was on CityCoins, they would have been welcomed with open arms.
Yeah, we talked about this on our last live stream. It's like Uber's to me seems like the perfect example of like a utility that can decentralize. Like the founder is gone. Like it's like this thing that's just going to keep growing. And if it keeps getting handed over to like business executive people that are like going like profit forever, capitalism forever down like the wrong path, it's like, it's like cut that off now, decentralize it. You've got this perfect two-sided market. It's just like, and you can't even like function without Uber or Lyft if you're traveling nowadays. Like it's literally a utility.
It totally is the utility. Did you know that if Uber's servers went down, they could operate from your phones? Like they're already decentralized. Like they have the backups.
Like they have a peer-to-peer.
Yeah.
Wow.
This is what one of their like product people told me, who was like, the product person was like very close to Travis Kalanick, and he was like pretty high up and then left, and he taught me that. I looked into it like 3 years ago and it seemed like it was valid. I'm not sure if it still stands today, but
maybe they were watching a ton of Silicon Valley and they were just like slowly building this on this.
Yeah. Well, what's helpful is also like, knowing that your rating system hasn't been corrupted, and like being able to do background checks, so you don't have like, you know, people with psychotic issues becoming drivers and things like that. So like that's the case for accountability with like a human in the loop.
Yeah.
Kind of a I mean, related topic. It's like, you know, if people become kind of verified in a city and they're, you know, they're actively contributing to the city, and I'm so curious to see how, if cities distribute the dividend, as you called it, how that gets distributed, like who
Right
gets
now,
how much, and
totally.
all of that.
Yeah, it's like who's a deserving citizen, right?
Right.
And so right now, for both to both protect against like civil attacks and also as just like a directionally useful filter, the city of Miami is choosing those that are civic, people who are voting. So all voting citizens of Miami who prove that they live within Miami proper and have voted get the dividend. And I think that's like a directionally very useful sort of thing to do, because you know that person is a real person. Like you know that's not someone who doesn't live in Miami. You know they're deserving because they're willing to get their butt into a car and go to a voting booth or mail in the vote. They're doing some work, and that's like you know, it's like the work of democracy essentially is what they're doing.
That's so fascinating, because that I'm breaking that down, and it makes me think that means that pushes towards the user's identity being on a blockchain.
Yes,
and
definitely.
Potentially deeds and any sort of identifiable information also on a blockchain, which means the application layer is just huge that could get built around that. So that's super fascinating. That's so exciting to see that get built out. That's pretty 100%.
Cool. I think whoever builds out like the custody layer for citizens and like the directory of voting citizens and keeps it current with the government, you know, like does like a match. It's like, okay, this person's still a citizen. Might have something very valuable, because they'll essentially have a geographic map of citizens that can be served on like in a marketplace. I think that's potentially very useful. Like imagine if you can like send an NFT or a little bit of coin to that address, knowing that that person is Miami resident, and you have a little message. It's just like an ad, just simple idea. You know, if they open that, if they, you know, you pay them like a little gift, they open it up, they're like, oh, that's nice. It's an ad for like XYZ company or protocol or token or community. That's potentially an interesting way of I'd rather get paid to get mail than get junk mail in my inbox. That's like one example.
Right. Yeah. Bitcoin fees are not free either.
Totally. Yeah, totally.
So it wouldn't be like spamming, you know, like you see on Polygon, right?
Yeah,
NFTs in your OpenSea wallet
are getting actual like mail coming to their house about like buy this token. It's like, holy crap! Like who sold them that list? It's interesting when you talk about the incentive model, though. It's like, you know, it's the same problem as like, well, why did all of these like super smart people go to Wall Street, you know, at a certain time? Because it's like that's where they can make the most money, right? And I think like for civic stuff and for city things, it's like, hey, like this is a government model. Everyone knows like the max amount that someone could make there, and so it like tends to, you know, attract a certain type of like person that like is. I'm not saying like any less like intelligent, but just like has very like civic minded. And so it's like if you can kind of sway the pendulum a little bit so that the people that are building what you're talking about, Patrick, are like, hey, we've got some really smart folks that otherwise might go start this company in Silicon Valley, can now dev in their hometown and build like a really solid life, you know, just doing civic oriented duties, which like never was a thing before. And so it's like, you know, you're opening up a landscape in which that you're marrying those two markets together that like has never been done. And that's the interesting, it's kind of like the brain drain from like all these big tech companies like Uber. It's like, hey, like how many people work for Uber that probably make above the average income right now in like any country in the world, now could say, hey, wow, I can just go dev on like SF coin and like, maybe mine some, earn this thing, and now like feel like I'm providing a civic duty, or maybe that person's civic duty wouldn't come until they're like later stage in their life where they want to give back. They can do it in these prime earning years, which like that to me is like the innovation, less so than almost even like the technology behind it. It's like the innovation is in the process.
Yeah, I think also it's, just like when Apple invented the App Store, like it was distribution. So it's like, as a founder, it's like one of the hardest things to get is after you build a good product is distribution. And so it's like now being on, the City of Miami's App Store, right? You have access to all of these residents. You have access to perhaps, all of their Bitcoin wallets. You can tap into that. And then if you're in one city, if you're in the App Store for one city, you're actually in the App Store for every city that comes on the protocol in the future. And so cities can also, as soon as we build up some apps where like, hey, this is working for Miami, the revenue for Miami is increasing from this. Any city that comes into CityCoins in the future benefits from all the applications that have already been put on the Miami network. And so, if Miami is able to get that revenue
Layer
stream
on
up
top
to
of
the
layer. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
It's like,
Wow.
what's the word? Like compounding interest, right? So it's like, exactly like you said, layer upon layer, compounding interest, compounding effect, where it's like, would you rather have like $1 million now, or would you rather have a penny that doubles, every single second for, a week? I think, I don't know what the math is, but it's a lot more than $1 million.
Yeah, I love the idea that if you're a great dev in Austin and you build something for your local community, you can use it in New York and Miami. I think it's just awesome.
And composability.
Exactly.
In Seoul, or in Rio, and all around the world, right?
Totally. What I wanted to try on a quote, it just like popped in my head. People used to organize around geography. Now they organize themselves around financial networks. So, if you hold Bitcoin, I have something in common with you, even if you live in Asia. It's like you're a Bitcoiner. Okay, we've now organized this community. It's almost like an archipelago. It's like there's people all over the world that just hold Bitcoin, and these are the new sort of social networks, or the financial networks. And I think like if you look at CityCoins right now, it's almost like okay, we have like Manhattan before any skyscrapers were built, and so we need to terraform it, and we need to build out these financial networks and increase the utility. That's like the next step essentially. And we think we think people are gonna organize themselves around crypto. Like that's the future. Like, if Bitcoin gets to $1 million, Bitcoin is its own country, for lack of a better term.
Yeah,
that's where this is all going.
It feels like it's already there, but it's like I know what you're saying from like the outward stance. People still
exactly.
That's why it feels early, because it's still like for us, it's like my mind's already there. I'm already like, what a time to be alive! Like you're like holy shit. But it's like it's still taking that training of people understanding. I think this is a great way to do it. We are coming up on the hour 15. I feel we can go for like another 2 hours, but John, I don't know if you saw any.
I want to make one more point though.
Yeah.
And like, I love that Manhattan before anything's built example, but there's an interesting bigger point with all of this, and that's that these cities aren't printing money.
That's right.
That money is decided for them to use right now. And so if you're saying that these communities are built, like it's almost like these
big misconception too, I think.
Yeah. So like if I'm, I can't believe the cost of real estate, for example. Well, homes are nice and all, but if you look at the price of a home all over the United States right now, that's directly correlated to how the irresponsibility of central money printing.
Right.
And if you look at that, cheap money, cheap rates, well, where do they go from here? It's going to be fun. The cities, this is almost like a hedge against inflation and a hedge against central monetary policy, and they have some control over it. So I think that's another fascinating point, where it's like, if Miami's successful and builds a massive ecosystem, it's creating its own value aside from a central currency.
That's right. It's it's not dependent. It's like it is a self-deterministic, and the market gets to participate in how successful it becomes, not just as a geography, but also a protocol.
Love it.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. And that's a great point. Because, and it's not like with the CityCoins, it's a value transfer, right? It's not a value, like it's a creation, but it's really just being transferred from somewhere else to them with the value that was already there. It's not
you're creating new value too.
Yeah, but it's not like they're going and saying, "Hey, we're the U.S. government. We're now doubling our money supply."
Oh, right.
Right. Like you're taking this value that's over here and you're just moving it to where it belongs, and you're capturing it for the first time. Which people, if they invest in it and they want to be a part of it, there's value there. They can't argue that. I want to look through a couple of these questions right now. I've got like Bowtied Muni that says righteous beard at TO. I've got Ellie from our team that says Austin next. Let's go. I'm sure if you guys put her on that, she'll have that done in like a week. Let's see what else we got here.
There's one cool from well, I don't want to pick it. Go for it.
No, go. No, if you got to pick, go for it. There's like a ton in here.
I mean, this is sort of touched on, but I think we could probably talk about it a little more from Lord Russell Andrews. He says, Patrick, CityCoins are currently powered by Stacks, but are there any plans to create something like a city chain in the future for all CityCoins? So I think he's really referencing interoperability, and as this expands, how do you see that?
Stacks like meets the needs of CityCoins for now. If there's need for a city chain or like a city subnet for like higher speeds or anything like that, the community can start to build toward that. But each CityCoin is its own independent sort of thing. It can upgrade to its own chain if it wants to. It can live wherever it wants. There is no index coin, and part of the reason there was no index coin is you might get cities that disagree with each other, and you don't want them on essentially like the same. You don't want them on the same ledger necessarily, where it's like, like we can't have a city coin on the same city as the same ledger as that. Whereas like with Stacks, it's not just city coins. It's like all of like Bitcoin smart contracts. So it's almost like a digital no man's land that anyone can plug into and not have any control over it. I don't know. That was a bad answer, but
I'll say that I think that there will be. I think there will be city chains. I think each city will have their own chain if it reaches scale, right? Like
yeah.
And the cool thing is that they can just copy and paste it from the Stacks main chain to doing an app chain on top of Stacks, where they have another deployment of Stacks. Proof of transfer doesn't change at all, and then they can scale out their own blockchain through app chains. So.
But I think that will definitely happen, and I'm sure.
And I think cities even like that. That's kind of like just like understanding how cities work, that they're very attracted to that kind of a thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if there's a need for a city chain, I think it'll happen. I think you want to be careful. You want to be careful though, sort of with the whole like index coin chain concept, and understand what the negative and positive externalities of doing that is before doing it.
Awesome. What was their name again, John?
That was Lord Russell Andrews, whose bio says that he's going to live forever.
Lord Russell Andrews, congratulations on your NYC DGen number 111. We will DM you, and you will send us your wallet address, and we'll fire it off. And hopefully this is like a super epic NYC.
I'm gonna pick up one of those myself too.
Floor price just went up, boys.
But nobody better front run me on this show right now.
What kind of car is that?
I think it's a Bentley. I think
they have Bentleys and Lambos. That's a Bentley.
It kind of looks like a Bentley to me. Like just the front with the little thing here. Who knows? It could be like, there's like a little angle right here. Yeah.
I like that.
Super sick.
Nice.
Awesome. Cool, you guys. Well, hey, that was a lot of fun. I love talking with you guys about this. I feel like it just invigorated every time I think about CityCoins and like just the work that you guys are doing for the industry as a whole. There's so much innovation that can happen. I'm excited to see, who these startups are and these founders that apply to the Stacks Accelerator. So really good stuff. Maybe Trevor, you can tell us where do people find the Stacks Accelerator? Like, how do they find you guys? And then, whatever else you guys want to say to the community.
Yeah. So applications for our next cohort close January 31st. Anyone can go on apply at stacks.ac. That's our website. The application's up there. And, I think right now with CityCoins, like it's a golden opportunity. I mean, to be one of the first to be on this platform and to be able to solidify a lead while you have Miami and New York, two incredible cities already on the platform, and then successive cities being launched over the next year. Being in the App Store for cities, having that distribution built in and that incentive mechanism where you can bring together the two parties, the residents, the businesses, the cities together, and have that incentive to make things happen is a incredible opportunity. So if you have ever, thought about building a civic minded business or building tech that could be used in your city to solve problems that maybe you face every day, this I think is an incredible opportunity. So we'd love to have you apply. We invest $50K. There's no valuation cap when we invest. So like a typical accelerator, they take like 6% just straight up. We don't do that. We give you $50K. The valuation is whatever the other investors are doing. So we invest on the same terms as the other investors, $50K. That means you save a lot of equity. It could be, at the end, we might only get 0.5%, but we do it because we want to get the best founders. We give you the best deal. And we have an incredible network of 70 other founders from our last cohort who are there to support you. We have over 100 mentors in the network. Some of the mentors for the CityCoins track are incredible. Like we have Balaji, we have the CTO of the city of Miami. Patrick, do you want to mention some of the other mentors?
Yeah, sure. Stan Tamkivi.
Yeah,
Stan Tamkivi. He's the founder of Skype. He lives in Estonia, and he's like all about civic, kind of crypto-y stuff. We have both founders of Stacks. Myself. We have the former Ryan Hoover from Product Hunt, the former CMO of Consensus, which she was like pretty responsible for Ethereum like popping off in the early days. Consensus was like the marketing arm of Ethereum. Stacked. I mean,
for that
there might be more mentors. There might be more world-class mentors than there will be actual founders on this track.
At least right now. Well, I think I know those other accelerators that take 6% and then kind of spin you off to the universe. So I think the model that you guys are putting together is fantastic, and I think the mentor network is a huge piece of that. So congratulations.
Thanks. And the URL I think is like we really want builders who want to build for the world's largest marketplace, which is citizens and their government, at stacks, stacks.ac/CityCoins.
Gotcha.
So
we will post it on the Twitter for you guys.
Thank you so much.
Patrick, Trevor, a pleasure. John, as always. And
thanks, guys.
Thank you everyone for listening. We will chat with you